I just believe in the power of healing and restoration. And I know that if we can just come together and speak about the hard things, we can finally begin to heal. So, this is where we heal. Welcome to another episode of This Is Where We Heal podcast. I am Ashley Taylor-Maland, your host. And today I have a guest that is here from Virginia and someone that you might actually recognize for his platform where he speaks on toxic behavior from men and coaches women and men alike on how to spot those behaviors and to get out of those relationships, I think. Am I right when I'm saying that? Am I describing that correctly?
Yeah,
okay.
You got it.
So firstly, I want to know, we have Xavier Smith. How can they find you on Instagram?
So you can look for me on Xavier Tainment. I know that's a funny name. So it's Xavier, no space, and the word tainment, like entertainment.
Okay, so it's not Xavier, it's Xavier.
Oh, yeah. I mean, however you want to say it.
Let's start with getting your name right.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, well, I want to know if you were going to sum up what you do on your platform for the viewer, what would you say? Like, if someone's like, I am in a bad relationship right now, and I wanted to recommend what you do, how would you describe it?
I help people with overall relationship patterns, marriage, but mostly toxic and abusive patterns when they find themselves in situations that are unfavorable. I help them navigate, understand, and either get out of it or make it better for both of them.
And you actually coach couples too.
Yes, all the time.
Which is interesting because usually when you're talking about these types of things, you're like telling people to get out of a relationship, but you actually coach couples in those relationships too.
Because sometimes couples perceive each other as toxic because there's been so much happening. Mm-hmm. And then I help reveal, is it really toxic or is there just a terrible pattern that has formed because of what we know? So I help them discern the difference between truly toxic and like, hey, we just have bad habits that we need to figure out.
How do you discern the difference? I'd love to know.
Through individual behaviors. I look at it, I guess the wonderful part about being a coach is I take an objective perspective, so I'm not emotionally involved.
Right.
These people, when they have an emotional and subjective perspective, sometimes they can't see what's really happening here. Mm-hmm. They're doing things that come off a different way because we all have intentions.
Right.
But I'm sure you've heard the saying, the road to hell is sometimes paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make X happen as a result, and I can't because my preconditioning and socialization has led me to believe that this behavior generates this result.
Oh.
And I tell them, no, this result doesn't come from this behavior. And they're like, oh, okay, so if I do this, yes. Then that's how I get them to see the difference.
I love that. That's such a good point, too, because I do think that when we're hurt by someone in a relationship that we perceive as toxic, a lot of times we have this tendency to label them without really knowing what's actually going on behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I've called people toxic before. I've probably called someone a narcissist before or assumed they were a psychopath before, and maybe they really weren't. Maybe they were just a deeply insecure person that was acting out in ways that weren't beneficial for them or me.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of the cases that I've seen. But I've also seen an equal amount of the other side where people are unaware and unknowingly being manipulated, and I have to reveal that to them.
Wow.
So,
I bet that's hard.
In the beginning.
So in that scenario, how do you do that without, or do you just not worry about whether you're going to offend the other person or not?
There's a way to word it.
Okay.
Because these people sometimes are in a place where they don't understand what's happening. And they're so locked in and convinced that this is good to an extent, but they know something is off. There's like an internal nervous system error that's happening. And they're like, it feels good to be here, but something's off. Why am I always unhappy? Why do I feel like I can't please this person? It's like they can't piece it together. Mm-hmm. So what I have to do is get them to see it for themselves.
Yeah.
I can't just straight up tell you, he's toxic, he's crazy, you should leave, girl. They probably had all of their friends do that.
Yeah, right,
You know, so I'm giving them a different set of value. I'm like, okay, well, let's look at it from your perspective. Mm-hmm. That's what people normally don't do.
Yeah.
They don't take the time to listen to someone who's like, let's say, a victim. And truly understand where you're coming from and level with you, right?
Yeah.
They're just so quick to throw it at you like, oh, you're crazy, there's something wrong with you. Why did you go back and keep choosing the same person? Not understanding that there's more at play here than just what's on the surface. But they're not coaches, they're not therapists. So
Yeah.
I guess what could we expect, you know?
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, it makes sense too, because a victim, more times than not, they're not looking at like the situation in truth. They're trying to they're trying to justify the behavior of that person because they really do want to believe this person loves me. This person does want what's best for me. They can't help it that they're acting that way. And a lot of times and I know this because I was a victim, we question ourselves first. Like, so you do something toxic or you do something negative that's probably crossing a boundary that's not okay, not acceptable, but I'm going, well, maybe I did something to trigger that. Maybe it was the way I said that. He wouldn't have probably ever acted that way if I hadn't done or said or, whatever first. So you're justifying their behavior and putting it on yourself first. And I think that's why a lot of victims end up staying in those relationships so long, because they really are trying to see the good in the other person and assuming that they have fault too. And that can be a dangerous place to be, because then you're justifying behavior that's totally unacceptable, that's abusive, and that always progresses, as you know. Abusive relationships progress in abuse. Anyway, it's a whole thing.
Well,
it's a
if
whole
you
thing.
think of it from like a science perspective, it's trying to cope, right? I'm trying to get that feeling of emotional resolve. And maybe in the past, I didn't get that met halfway. Maybe my parents didn't meet me halfway. My friends, my teachers, maybe I was always to blame because of other unhealed people that were in my life. So I had to do more of the work. I had to do more of the legwork and the emotional work and the communication. So now that's been ingrained into my pattern. So when I meet someone that's at a deficit, I naturally kick in that gear. And now I'm like, okay, well, let me try to solve it for you. Let me try to do it for you. And then we can be fine together, when not realizing inadvertently this person is being enabled for further bad behaviors. So then you're like, how did I end up with this person so long? How did I end up doing it? It's because you didn't realize. You thought you were doing the right thing because of how you were taught.
Yeah.
So that's when I break that pattern and I say, no, you deserve to be met halfway.
Wow, that's so good. Yeah, when a person is like, I've always just given 80% and only expected 20%, they don't know that that's actually not okay.
Yeah, especially in a relationship, because that's a partnership.
Dang, that's so true.
So
that is so true and so good. Okay, I have to know, how did you get started doing this? Because I have to imagine you get a lot of backlash, like especially from, say men. But anyone can be toxic, obviously. But how did this, why, when, where, what? Give me all the details.
It started with my own journey. I think at a young age, I grew up in New York and Queens, shout out to New York. But there were a few characters around me that were trying to coach me into how to talk to women.
Okay.
And a lot of the behavior patterns that they taught me were more on the manipulative side. So I'm not using that as an excuse for my behavior, but my behavior was definitely more manipulative for years. And I didn't even realize it because I was I knew that people were getting hurt, but I thought it was justified.
Yeah.
And I never assaulted anyone, never cheated, anything like that. Just more, not that this is better, but just more of the lying and stuff. So, but I thought that, hey, if a person does a certain behavior that doesn't work in your favor, then you force it by trying to manipulate the situation. And you create these little behavior patterns that make them come to you. You make them codependent and reliant on you. And I thought that was the way it worked until I went to counseling by accident. And yeah, I met a dude who was like trying to be my bro, but he was secretly a marriage counselor, like hiding in the bushes, like, dude, I'm gonna. So,
that's great.
Yeah, shout out to Corinthian. That is the counselor that got me. His name is Corinthian.
I love that.
That also appealed to me for obvious reasons.
Right,
you know? So I was like, okay. And then he told me, I'm gonna help you get a woman to do whatever you want. And I was like, really? I'm like, let's go, dude. Because there was one girl that currently blocked me. And I was like, I'm blocked right now. What do I do? He said, give me your phone, bro. He sent a text. Eventually, she unblocked me and she was like, come over right now. Let's hang out. I was like, how did you do that? We've been arguing for weeks. He said, you know what I did? You want to know what the trick is? I said, yeah. He said, it's called being a good man. And I was like, oh, sorry. What's that trick?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Then that's when he started to introduce me to all of the rules and basically telling me everything I know is wrong.
Wow.
Because I was trying to be in my mind, I thought that's what being a good man was, and I was wrong. So then I was like, wait, all of these dudes taught me how to get women, how to get them to respond a certain way. And it was all through dishonesty and manipulation. And I was actually hurting us. If I use your deficits to make you more codependent, how is that being a good man? If I use your insecurities to do what I want, if I shower you with love and then breadcrumb you, how is that healthy for either of us? We're going to crash and burn eventually.
That is so sad and so good, though.
Yeah, so that's when I realized I went on the journey, and then once I became more self-aware, I started to realize how many other people were going through it, very similar to what I did. And I was like, I'm going to expose all of this.
Wow.
So then I started doing it on social media. I was like, let's just get it out. Let's tell all the secrets, and I don't care. Yeah, and I got backlash. Oh, my goodness. Because there's a lot of guys who are naturally manipulative, who love that realm.
Yeah, and that works for them.
Right. And then there are guys who, I guess, are still not self-aware.
Yeah.
So then they come after me thinking that they're justified. Like, I'm justified in this behavior. Or they'll project and they'll say, well, women do it too.
Yep, that's what it always is.
And I'm like, I'm so tired of that women do it too remark. Like, I get it. We're humans. We all do similar stuff. But sometimes the opposite gender needs to highlight the other one.
Two wrongs don't make a right, folks.
Exactly. I'm all for that.
Just because someone else is being toxic and harmful doesn't mean you have to be too.
Yeah. And when are we going to give each other a space? Like, when as men are we just going to sit down and listen and say, whatever you say, I'm going to just listen to it and hear you out.
Wow.
Without trying to judge you or trying to invalidate you.
Wow. So when you started that and you started just like posting videos about it, did that just immediately blow up for you?
Yeah, once I started to highlight the genders. Before that, I was just being general. They're like, oh, you could be talking about anyone. But then when I started listing specifics for genders, then it was like the explosion happened. Because that's when the most anger came too.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, you're all for the women. You're just trying to get women to date. You're just trying to get women. I'm like...
You're simp.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm the biggest simp ever. I'm like, and it's interesting how they got that. Cause I'm like, I don't have an amazing dating life from this.
Right.
That's not how it ended up working. You've got people in your DMs saying that they need help with their relationships.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm getting. And I get dudes too. I get dudes who say, dude, I didn't even realize I was doing this. Thank you, man. How can I sign up with you?
Wow.
I want to be better. Unfortunately, it takes the women to get the men to come in.
I mean, that's still hopeful though, if they're willing. Willingness is so important,
Yeah, it takes a bit.
You're getting guys that are actually coming to you.
Yes, there are guys who actually do love what I say, shockingly. But yeah,
It is shocking.
Yeah, because I'm like, but no, they see themselves in what I'm saying.
I think that's a really important thing to consider too, because we often want to assume the worst. When you've experienced the worst, you just naturally have a tendency to see the worst and assume the worst. But there probably are a lot of people, I mean, even just on the victim point of view, that are just not self-aware. Mm-hmm. They're not self-aware, and they're not understanding of human behavior, right? And so they're acting out in ways, like you had said before, that really aren't true to who they want to be, but they aren't self-aware enough to know the difference between, this isn't who I actually am, this is just something I've learned, Yeah,
and it's it's established patterns based on, socialization, conditioning, and our generational, and even more than that, right? Our memories, things that we've been through, things that we've experienced, it all forms it, and how we perceive it. Like, I mean, there was that study on LinkedIn that said, 15% of people are actually self-aware.
What?
Still, yeah. Which is still, I don't know how accurate that is, but I mean, if in the world today, you could probably see it every day. Like, some people have no idea what they're doing, and they're just kind of going based on their own pattern.
Oh
so
my God.
it's like, and I guess we can talk about that at some point, but the Matrix, it's like unplugging yourself from everyday experiences and what you know. Because I think as humans, we're routine-based and more habit-based.
Yep.
And once we get into that, then we feel safer.
Yeah.
Because there's the idea of safety. But sometimes your idea of safety might have been formed by something that's not safe. But you don't know the difference.
That's so true. Coping mechanisms, for an example. Like, you build this, exterior around yourself with horrible patterns that actually are toxic to yourself and other people. You start behaving in these ways as a safety measure for yourself, and it kind of goes back to what you had said before too about insecurity, and how sometimes we're acting out of insecurity. I have to control you because I'm insecure, right? Mm-hmm. Like, in a lot of toxic men, controlling nature is always like one of the number one red flags is like if somebody's trying to control you, what's really going on here? And a lot of times it's an abusive behavior and a predatory behavior, but maybe at times it's really just a lack of self-awareness,
100%. Yeah, because it's easier to externalize and to say, okay, I'm insecure because that person is doing something. Now, here's the thing. We also invalidate each other. We could start there.
Yeah.
Like, being insecure isn't supposed to happen. Like, we weaponize it now. Like, oh, you're insecure. Like, that invalidates my whole argument. Like, am I not allowed to have an insecurity?
That is
Am
so
I not
true.
a human? Like, certain situations are not going to make me feel secure.
Wow.
And yes, maybe that's something I could start with in me, right? I can start there. But if it's something that you can help me with, we don't think on interdependent levels anymore.
That's so
it's
true.
all about like either you or me needs to make this change.
Oh.
But we don't think about each other. And then as far as regulation goes, we don't even do that.
That's so true.
There's dyadic regulation where it's interdependent regulation, where we help each other. The whole partnership method has I don't know if it's disappeared from the relationship community, but we don't think in those terms. So then we're like you versus me. Mm-hmm. You need to fix this. It's because you're wearing that outfit. It's because you're going there and you're acting like this. Not saying, hey, this situation makes me feel uncomfortable and I realize that's a me thing. Maybe you can help me with that. What can we talk about to help me feel more secure? Because I realize I'm feeling this way and it's a little bit irrational, but please, because I'm not perfect.
That is so good.
Why can't we just come to each other like that?
That is so good. Oh my God. How many relationships would have been saved if that kind of communication could have been at play? I'm just literally I'm thinking of all the times that I was insecure and lashed out in a way that just actually pushed that person away, or vice versa. Been with someone that had an insecurity that I would have very openly accepted and said, okay, I'll work with you. But because of the way they lashed out at me, I immediately pulled away or got defensive instead of trying to understand where they were coming from.
Yes, because that's understanding. Because what happens in your system, in your nervous system, is your amygdala spikes.
Yeah.
And that takes less than 2 seconds.
Wow.
So you have something that's not in your control, that's in a primitive part of your brain that's been here for decades, and then it goes off and it heightens. It's cortisol, it's all these, chemical reactions. So now you have something that's out of your control that you don't even understand is at work, and you're trying to navigate through that.
Yeah.
So, but your system is telling you you're under attack.
Yeah.
The first thing you think is you're attacking me, because that's the most logical thing in the moment, right? I'm feeling attacked, so obviously someone's attacking me.
Yeah.
When in reality, what might be happening objectively is you think it's an attack, but it's just a person trying to show you a different perspective. Sometimes a difference of perspective and handling can feel scary.
Yeah, sure. And if you think about it, being able to be open and vulnerable enough to say, you know what, I don't know why, but this, whatever that we'll say, we're dating and you go out with your buddies every Wednesday night for drinks and darts because that's just the thing you guys have always done. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a way you socialize. It's healthy for you. It's good for you. But for me, dating someone that drinks makes me really insecure because I have this fear deep down that they're going to cheat if they drink, if they go out and they drink and I'm not there. So me being able to say, hey, I know you're not necessarily doing anything wrong, but I have this deep-seated insecurity when it comes to being with somebody that drinks. And I'm not saying that you're doing anything or that you would, but I'm just insecure every time you go. When you're with your friends on Wednesdays, I feel insecure the whole time. It makes me anxious. And I wonder if there's a way that we could you can help me work through this. How they respond tells you everything too.
Oh, yeah, because then you'll know who you're dealing with.
Because a person that truly does love you and is healthy is going to say, hey, I totally get it. You know what? In fact, I kind of feel a little insecure sometimes too, like when you're out with your friends and you know what? Let's talk about it. I'll call you tonight. We'll talk about it and we'll figure something out. That's a healthy response. That's someone who really cares about you as a team, as a couple, versus give us an example of what the opposite would look like.
The opposite is, well, you're just insecure. Well, you got a problem. You met dudes before me that did something wrong to you and I'm going to pay for it?
Yeah. Why do I have to pay for all your ex-boyfriends?
You know what? That goes to show that you're not mature and that you're actually a little bit narcissistic. You should go to therapy.
You're just trying to control me.
Yeah. You don't actually care about how I feel. What is this?
I go out with my friends every Wednesday, and that's not going to stop. So I'm sorry if you're insecure about it, but you're going to have to get over it.
If you don't like it, then you don't have to be here.
Yeah. We don't have to be together. This probably isn't going to work.
Then no, you got to really double down. After that, I got to start ghosting you.
Right.
I got to take at least 4
You're
hours
insecure?
to get back.
I'm not answering anymore.
Yeah, no emojis, no hearts, all of that just turns off. I start to make you really feel it.
Yeah, so now that I know you're insecure, I want to make you more insecure.
Yeah, because I need you to learn your lesson.
Not only are you insecure, but now you're going to feel unworthy too, okay?
And now you've taken a lower level in priority in my life, so you're going to feel like you have to work back up to it.
Yeah, now you have to re-earn my trust for being insecure. Now I don't trust you.
Because how do I know you're not insecure about 10 more things? You know,
Right. If it starts here, what is it next, you know? Next, you're going to be insecure whenever I want to go to the strip club. Like, I can't handle stuff like that. That's a you problem. That's not a me problem.
You know what? I'm not going to tell you when I do stuff like that to protect you.
Yeah, right.
In fact, if I start cheating, I'm not going to tell you to protect you.
Yeah, this is for you.
Yeah, this is for us.
I'm thinking of us.
Yeah.
God.
Jeez Louise.
So, dude, I dated this guy that obviously now looking back, I can see that he had an insecurity about other men being in my life, which that's a normal thing. I understand that. Yeah. But with the nature of what I do, obviously, I have to interact with males. Like, I have to interact with men. And I know that I'm not the type of person that would be doing anything inappropriate behind their back. I know that about myself, right? But I can be understanding of the insecurity there. However, this was the same guy who had only almost all female friends, okay? Almost all of his friends were female. And we're not talking about just acquaintances meeting up for a coffee here and there. We're talking about they would come spend the weekend, or he'd go meet them somewhere for a weekend. They'd be on the phone. I mean, all of the female friends in his life were either in love with him or at some point wanted to be with him or something along, or they had slept with him before, but they just weren't anymore. But he was so insecure about me having male friends, which I never saw by myself, period. It would be like a group thing, or like, you know, I'd see him here and there at the gym and say hello. Like, it was never like I was seeking out my male friends to just hang out with by myself. But anytime I mentioned anything to do with him, he'd be like, you have way too many guy friends. You don't need that many men in your life. You don't even, you're too blind to even see that they all just want to sleep with you. And I'm like, and at the time, I was really trying to consider where he was coming from. Like, really trying to think, and then I'd say, yeah, but you have female friends that you literally spend weekends with. So what I'm failing to see how it's not okay for me to go meet up with my friends from the gym. And there's other females there too, by the way, and we're all just friends. None of us are dating. None of us have ever shown any interest in each other. We're literally just friends. But it's okay for you to spend a weekend in the woods with a girl that you used to sleep with 2 years ago? Like, I'm failing to understand how this is the same thing and why it's not okay for me, but it's okay for you. And he would be like, well, I've been friends with them for a long time, and all my ex-girlfriends used to have issues with it, and so I just can't date anyone that's going to have issues with that anymore. But you do.
Well, there was an opportunity here because he kind of gave up his hand.
Oh,
See,
yeah?
sometimes when people argue from emotion, they give up their hand. And that's what sometimes we miss because we're so in the weeds of the argument. He said, all of them want to sleep with you. So he's the magical dude that doesn't want to sleep with the women he's friends with.
Exactly.
That makes no sense.
Exactly.
So he just gave up his hand.
Yeah.
Because if that's true about all guys, then that means you're one of them. So I can't trust you with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I can use your own argument against you. Mm-hmm. Whatever reasoning you have after that is invalid.
I thought of that when he said that. And I thought, what makes you so special?
He's not. Because if all guys want to do that, then you're not special. So by your logic, you might just be projecting.
Yeah.
So either you're projecting or you're one of them. Your argument is not going to win.
Right.
You know, so most likely guys like that are projecting a little bit. Like they'll say, all these guys are doing this. Meanwhile, they don't think that. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, I know because I'm a guy. Okay, then apply the same standard to yourself. Mm-hmm. Double standards not only kill relationships, it kills society because we place double standards on the genders. And I think we're never going to progress as long as we have double standards.
Oh, I know it. That was like, I have to say that relationship in itself was the worst double standards I've ever seen. Everything was a double standard. Mm-hmm. Everything was a double standard. But anyway, moving on from my own personal situation.
Well, let's get more about your personal life.
Everyone, okay, so here's the scoop. No, since you've started your platform, obviously you date, I'm sure, and you like, or do you? I don't know, actually know that.
Asexual, I'm playing. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, ladies.
I date. No, definitely, I do date. So what was the question? I'm sorry.
Well, so what I want to know is, like, do you feel like you pick up on those patterns really quickly,
Yes.
or does it take you time?
Yeah, very quickly.
And how do you respond to that?
With compassion, because I don't believe that anyone should be perfect, because I know I'm not.
That's so good.
I mean, how did I end up here, right? Not through perfection. So what I try to do is see if there's a way. See, when people think about relationships, I think sometimes they think of what can that person do for me?
Yeah. That's
I
so
think
good.
what can I do for that person? Now, I'm not going to overly give myself, but I'm going to say, how can I fit into your life? What value can I bring? But you have to give me opportunity, and you have to be able to articulate. And that's normally where the cutoff is.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have to be your therapist and your boyfriend. So maybe there's more work that needs to be done. So that's what I look for. But if anything, I just look for someone I can work with if I'm going to find someone.
Yeah. Someone that's willing to actually communicate.
Yeah.
Communication goes a long way.
And willingness is a big thing.
Yeah.
Because you might be able to communicate it, but you might be scared. You might be intimidated. There might be too much. Or you might have, an ex that you're still talking to. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's so much going on in the world.
Yeah.
So I do my best to try to give space for opportunity.
I love that. That's so good. How can someone, I ask this from a victim's perspective, obviously, because
yeah,
most
go
of the
for
people
it.
that follow me are
Victims?
have been a victim at
Me
some
too.
point, right?
Yeah.
So how can we go into relationships with compassion while also still, though, having a realistic expectation of this is too far? Like, do you get what I'm saying? Because of what happens a lot of time with women in particular, but just anyone really that's been in a toxic or abusive relationship, is you are overly compassionate, right? And that's exactly what you're doing when you're going into relationships, is how can I help this person? How can I be there for this person? How can I be, that one person that's going to see that they're really just a human too, and understand them. But then there's like, where is that line? Because at some point, though, compassion almost becomes a hindrance to your safety. Does that make sense?
Standards and boundaries. And having those, because what happens is when our patterns start to kick in, our emotions kick in and they cause exceptions, right? And excuses. But we have to have ironclad standards and boundaries regardless of who we meet, regardless of what excuses they make.
Okay.
That is more of a self-reflection where it's like understanding your point, where your limitations are.
Okay.
And a lot of the women that I've coached, which is like over like 1,000 now, they don't know that always because they haven't had someone teach them or show them. And all these guys are out here trying to get served. So they're like, I guess this is what I do, and they feel they're told that, okay, you're supposed to be this way. It happens in church environments. Women are supposed to submit. Like, men don't do that. Okay. Interdependency, guys. So, but anyway, learning your limitations. When were those moments in your past relationships that you felt like you were doing too much? Look at that as a blueprint, because sometimes we don't always have parents and leaders that can guide us through that.
Gosh, that's
So
good.
looking at
So
that
good.
as like a blueprint, like, okay, when I did this, I felt like I was overwhelmed. Well, maybe don't do that next time.
Yeah.
If this guy says something crazy like this and you find yourself going into a response, and learn about that, right? Like, what's a fawn response?
Yeah.
A lot of women that I've worked with have fawn response, where they're like, I just want to keep the peace.
What does
I'll
that
do whatever
mean?
it takes. So fawn response is when there's a conflict or there's a complication between you two, and instead of fighting or running, you try to keep the peace by basically serving the person. So you go into servant mode, where it's like, I just want to apologize. Like,
Oh my
okay, he's
gosh.
arguing with me, I'm just going to say sorry just to make it okay. Or I'm going to buy him something, or I'm going to cook for him, or I'm going to just cuddle next to him. I'm going to overly try to comfort him. I'm going to overcompensate in the comfort category to make sure he's regulated while
All in a
ignoring-
moment, while actually he should be doing that
He
for
should
me.
be meeting her there.
Yeah.
But she's more focused on making the relationship work, and because
Wow, I had no idea that was a fawn response. I've
didn't?
done that in every relationship I've ever had. I am a peacemaker all the way. The moment I sense like any sort of conflict, or they're upset, or I feel like I've made them upset or whatever, my instant response is, okay, how can I fix this? How can I make the peace? How can I make him feel better? I've always done that. And I had no idea that was a fawn response.
yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah, and it normally comes from conditioning earlier in life where you had to overcompensate for someone's love, right? Like someone didn't give you the approval, or someone didn't make you feel worthy or valued, so you felt like you had to overly try. And that's how you diffuse situations, or you choose to.
Gosh, I mean, that is honestly, like, I'm just kind of mind blown right now thinking back. Even just still to this day, even though I have done so much work and my boundaries are really strong now and my standards are higher and my expectations are, more realistic, like even in that, I have a threshold now where it's like, okay, I'm going to give you a chance, but you cross this line, I'm going to lovingly say, look, this isn't going to work for me. I'm sorry. Wish you the best. And I'm very nice about it. But even still, it is hard for me to do that. There's a part in me that still wants to, I'll give an example. Let's say someone cancels on me last minute. And that for me is just a boundary because that makes me feel disrespected in a way. And maybe that's a little nitpicky, but it's like 1 time's okay, that's fine. 2 times, 3 times, no, we're good here. However, there's still a part of me that struggles to be like, hey, look, like, this is a boundary for me. I'm sorry. Like, I wish you the best. It's not personal. There's still a part of me that it's like hard for me to do that. It's hard for me to say the truth, even in a compassionate way, because I worry about how it's going to make them feel. Like, even though I know I'm doing the right thing for me and I have to do this for me, I still worry about how's that going to make them feel. Like, couldn't tell you why.
The beautiful part is that you're aware of it.
Yeah.
See, sometimes there are things at work that we just won't understand because subconsciously there's things that are happening in our body that don't make entirely much sense.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're aware that it's there, and you take action anyway, that's what maturity and emotional intelligence is. Getting past that primitive, underdeveloped part of ourselves that we still can consciously make a decision regardless of how we feel.
Yeah.
That's hard for most of us.
Yeah.
Like, even for me, I still have moments where I'm like, oh, you haven't texted me in an hour. I'm ready to go nuts. Like, who are you with? But then I got to sit down and remind myself, doesn't mean they're cheating. They're probably just going about their day.
Yes.
Xavier, you have worth. You don't have to just go crash out, so I go through it too.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it truly is. Like, even with that example, like, I remember a time there was a guy I was talking to for a while, and he went, like, we were usually pretty consistent. He went like a full entire day without talking to me, and I spiraled. Like, and I remember at first it was like no big deal, like a couple hours, and I was just like, hey, hope you're doing well. 4 hours, I was like starting to get anxious. 6 hours, and I'm like, okay, something's wrong. I'm just starting to get activated. I'm like, my mind is going like this. My heart is like racing, and and then finally I just like lose myself, and I'm like, I can't believe you do this to me. And I'm like going crazy. Of course, this is a long time ago. This was before I healed, but I'm still remembering that moment. Now, hindsight 2020, he was actually out with another woman. And so there's a reason, like, the reason why I bring this up is because I'm asking myself, okay, how do I learn that? Well, actually, rather than how do I learn, how do I help other women too? Because this is part of my platform, understand that the mental spiraling is normal. It's okay. Like, when something's not consistent, it's okay to start questioning it, to start having doubts, to maybe even get anxiety about it. That's okay. The part where I messed up, and I say messed up, but we're all human. The part where I messed up is that I wasn't able to control that on my end by going, you know what? Whether something's wrong or whether it isn't, I'm okay. I can handle this. I will be fine, and I will deal with this when I do finally hear back from him. Like, instead of doing that, I just I started just like let loose and like let it out on this person, which again, he was doing something wrong, but either way, I just hadn't gotten to a place of my own control yet where I was like, it's okay. This isn't a reflection of you. It's okay to feel this way. It makes sense that you would feel anxious right now. Sit with it. Sit with it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It makes wonderful sense.
But I'm so glad I'm there now. I just wasn't then, but like, anyway.
And you understand how to get there.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand that.
Sitting with it, sitting with the uncomfortable feelings of, I feel like I'm losing my mind. And if you have to go throw your pillow across the room or defeather it or whatever you got to do, cry it out, bawl your eyes out, punch, your bed, like that's okay. Do all of that, regulate that part of yourself on your own first. And then you know what I do now too? I give myself 24 hours, right? Actually, I say that. I in my personal relationships with like family or friends, if I'm having like a moment where something's making me feel insecure or it upset me or it offended me and I just feel like I got to get it out, I give myself 24 hours now where I go, okay, this sucks right here in this moment, but I will not say anything until tomorrow when I've sat with it and thought it out and thought it through. Every single time that I do that, by the next day, I'm actually good. I've actually sat with it long enough, felt the emotion long enough, released the emotion, and now I'm more regulated and going, oh, you know what? It actually wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Or actually I am okay, regardless. Even if there was an intentional hurt there anyway.
Outcome is scary because it's unknown, right? And none of us really have control of the outcome. Yeah. You can have a resume all day and go into an office of 10 people, doesn't mean you're going to be chosen. And there's so many times that outcome becomes a part of our everyday struggle. Even in a relationship, you used to text me 2 hours and 4 hours. What if you don't like me anymore?
Yeah, that's
then
what it is.
It's so easy for us to take ownership. So what you've shown is that you've regulated through that and said, okay, I just have to give it up, right? And you can't control outcome. You shouldn't have to. All you can say is, whatever comes, I'm going to be able to weather that storm.
Yeah.
And when you think in that way, a lot of these things will stop you from reacting because the reaction is your body telling you you're under attack.
Yeah.
Take control.
Yeah.
Do whatever you got to do. Text multiple times. Do a whole bunch of things. And that's normally in alignment with anxious attachment a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's what it's telling you to do is take control.
Yeah.
But taking control comes off differently objectively than you think subjectively.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways I get people to notice.
Yeah, that's so good. That is so good. And honestly, like it changes you when I had to do a lot of self-worth healing, self-concept healing, because 99% of my insecurities and my triggers and all of those things were based on the fact that I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel worthy enough. I didn't feel valuable enough. And so this person responding in a certain way or not responding for that matter in the way I was hoping or expecting made me feel more validated in, oh, I'm not good enough for them. I don't, you know what I mean? And so I had to get to the point where I realized whether this person treats me well or treats me badly, I'm still good enough, I'm still worthy. Whether this person is faithful or this person is unfaithful, I'm still worthy, I'm still valuable. Whether this person is healthy in their responses or they're a terrible communicator, I'm still worthy. This is not a reflection of me.
Yeah.
The outcome is not the reflection of me.
Right.
The outcome of what a person chooses to do when they're not with me is the reflection of them and who they are and where they're at in their life.
Yes.
And once I got really solid in that, it changed everything for me. Because I finally was able to go, like I said, I could sit with it for 24 hours. If this still bothers me in 24 hours, I'll have a conversation with them. I'll tell them when I'm not emotionally charged, hey, you know what? Yesterday, you went a really long time without talking to me. I'm sure you were busy. That's totally fine. I understand that people have a life outside of me. But it also was really weird. It felt inconsistent compared to the pattern of communication we've had, and it just made me feel really insecure, and I want you to know that. It bothered me. Do with you what you want with that, but it didn't make me feel good. So, and it just, you always feel so much better when you can communicate from the perspective of actually thinking about it and self-awareness versus being triggered and responding, and reacting.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And from a manipulator, that's what we do. We try to get you to react on purpose.
Oh, we gotta talk about that.
Yeah, because the way that you just talked, where you said, I sit with it and I tell myself it's not me, what they choose to do without me is on them, as opposed to, I'm feeling reactive. Let me be reactive. Let me just go for that. And maybe they'll do what I want. See, like manipulators say, I'm feeling reactive. I'm feeling like you're not in this space of control. Ooh. So I'm going to have to do things that go against what you value in order to gain that control.
Ooh.
So what I'll do is find out what triggers you.
Ooh.
And then I'll use that trigger and act like I didn't do it on purpose. So then you're secretly being triggered. It's like a puppeteer. 10 different ways, and you don't even realize it. Why am I so reactive? There's one method that I came up with. It's a theory, but it's called the gas chamber method. And I taught my class this. I teach a class, by the way. But anyway, so what it is, back in, I think, I might have the year wrong, but 1803, during the Haitian Revolution, there was a gas chamber that was used in order to kill some of the people. And it basically was like sulfur gas. So when you're in a relationship, there's a certain amount of consistency that happens. And when that consistency is broken, that can feel a little bit alarming for your nervous system. So what manipulators do is they break it on purpose. Because if I can break that, then I'll get you to look at me on a pedestal. Because I'm suffocating you, right? By taking time away, by breadcrumbing, by leading you into thinking that I'm not as interested as I used to be. And that'll make you work harder. So when you start working harder for something that you should get easy, oxygen is something that's free, that's unlimited, that's convenient. A relationship should have a lot of that. Convenience should be unlimited, it should be accessible. But I'm gonna remove that access to make you believe that you have to now earn something that should have already been given to you. So now you find yourself working, and what that does, if you go into a fawn response, then now that's conditioning your brain chemistry, because now your habit pattern is going into, well, whenever he does this, I do more and I get the reward, because our brains have a reward system. There's actually a 2015 study in Harvard that talks about the reward system of your brain. And what it does is, when you start receiving rewards for certain behaviors, you're like programming yourself to keep reacting in this pattern. This is what I know now. So you can be conditioned by manipulators. And then that's why you keep getting into relationships with that type of person, because your brain says reward means I suffer till I get something. It shouldn't be easy. So that's why when you see people who are scared of what's easy, because that's no longer their normal. Well, this is just simple. They're just reciprocating. They're just giving me stuff on a silver platter. We're just communicating. Something's wrong. I'm not getting the same. And see, what that does is it's an emotional spike. Yeah, this goes level. It's an emotional spike. So if you gas chamber a person and they come out to oxygen, they're like, oxygen feels like candy. So if you have been ghosted and betrayed and not told things and not communicated with, you're being cast out in the darkness. Then when they communicate with you a little bit, hey, you know what, I do love you. You're like, it takes you to a 10. So now you're being forced into a heightened pattern. And you don't even realize it. You're going into a deep dark to a high rise. It's a high and a low. This is unsustainable for most relationships.
Yeah, I mean, it destroys your nervous system.
Absolutely.
And it destroys your mental health.
And it causes cognitive dissonance. So then you go into a depression. And that's normally when I get people who are thinking about taking their lives, people who are, on the edge, people who are harming themselves. Like, this all happens. And then, but the person on the other side just makes it worse, because then they go double down. Anytime you get a little bit of confidence, you get a little bit of backbone, a little bit of back talk. Okay, now I got to go harder. I got to find someone else to make you even more jealous. Oh yeah, and you're gonna find out about it. And then I'm gonna start calling you different things. You're not gonna be in a relationship anymore. You're a situationship. So now I gotta keep upping the game, because you start getting confident. You can't get that confidence, because that means you have control over me. I'm secretly very insecure. So, but I can never reveal that to you, and I can never be vulnerable with you. So then people ask me, does the narcissist love you? Does the manipulator love you? How could they? They've never been vulnerable with you. Maybe ideally they'd like to, because they see that value. That's why they chose you. But
I'm just like flabbergasted.
We're still scratching the surface.
I mean, you just literally dissected my last relationship in a deep way. I'm like, were you there?
I get that all the time.
Were you there? Whoa. Like, that makes so much sense, because generally I'm not an insecure person in a relationship, right? Like, I'm just a normal, happy person in a relationship. I like being in a relationship. I like companionship. I'm pretty happy. I'm communicative. So I don't generally have insecurities in relationships, but the relationship that literally destroyed me and led me to my healing journey last year, that was exactly what happened. And I could never figure it out. What was going on? I was constantly confused. It was like the whole relationship was just pure confusion. I was constantly being triggered, and I kept thinking it was a me issue, going, why am I so triggered by these things? It was like everything he did and said and didn't do and didn't say was constantly triggering me to where I was getting sick. I was literally physically getting to where I was like sick all the time. And I mean, it was like a mental roller coaster, but I genuinely at that time thought, this must just be the stuff in me that I still need to heal. This is just me. So I would then go into fawn response and be like, I'm so sorry. What did I do? Can you explain to me so we can work through it? I'd love to talk this out. I don't understand what's going on right now. I don't understand why you're upset. I don't know why you're mad. I don't know why I haven't heard from you. Like, I genuinely was trying to like do the 99.1% thing, thinking I'm just getting triggered by these things and it's not his fault.
So what that does inadvertently is rewards him.
Yeah.
You know, so it's enablement, but it's not on purpose.
Right.
You know, it's like you're doing what you think is going to work. And that's where people can't discern the difference.
Yeah.
I think that this should work, right? It's worked in the past, and he ends up doing it. That's why I tell people, yeah, you can go back to that person, but let's say what you do works. Let's say you express yourself, you throw yourself on the table, and you're like, I'm going to just open my heart. And now this person ends up coming back to you just because of that. That means now you have to maintain that.
Yeah.
Is that realistic for you? Or do you want to be met halfway a little bit?
Yeah.
Because a person, regardless of how it happens, people get upset, things happen, but we're always going to be willing to meet each other there. And if we're not doing that, then this is not a good, healthy relationship.
I mean, it's like you're trying to cross a bridge that they're literally setting on fire.
Yeah.
And you're still trying to cross and get to them, and they're literally the ones starting every fire in
And
your
they're
path.
like, now you got to jump over the fire.
Yeah,
now.
well, now you got, get over
Prove
that.
it.
Get over that, and then show me how much you care.
That's how you create a victim. That's how you do that. You break them down. And if they're already coming in broken, then you can just double down on that.
Oh my God, that's sick. That is, it's so sad. It's so, what is behind that? Like what, I want to understand, because I'm thinking to myself, how could any human being want to purposefully do this to another? Especially someone that they can very clearly see cares about them deeply and wants to make it work. Like, what is that?
So that's a great question. It's selfishness. Because if a person thinks selfishly, it's all about what I can gain. So I can't even see you. I just see what you're doing for me. So I'm able to unplug from the hurt that you're feeling.
My God.
But, you know, I'd like to think that we all have a bit of a moral compass. So we know something isn't right. We feel it. We know it. We see you saying, ouch, that hurts. But we're so, I guess, we're in our selfish nature that we're not really taking it into consideration. Like, if you think of the way some narcissist brain works, I did something bad to you, but it was justified. You know, like it needed to happen.
So they genuinely think it's justified.
Yes. Like, it's for your own good. Because, I mean, it worked, right?
He did not just say that. He used to say that.
Because it worked, right? Like, I mean, you ended up doing what I wanted. We're functional on my terms, so it worked.
I literally, this is,
I know.
I wonder how many women are listening to this going, that was me too. Like, I literally remember one time saying to him, like, I'm just got to be honest, like, I am so confused by you. Like, I feel like I'm trying to like figure you out all the time. And I'm just like, I'm constantly in confusion with this, and it's unsettling. And he literally laughed and goes, it's good for you. And I go, excuse me?
He laughed and said that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a different type of demented.
And I go, it's good. No, it's not good for me. I'm miserable trying to like understand you and figure you out. And he's like, no, it's good for you.
That's crazy. What?
You know, this guy, and we can talk about this too, because you were saying that, you know, they're trying to get something from you. So they're separated from your heart and your emotions and how you feel, because they're just trying to gain something.
Yeah,
they're not trying to connect with you.
No.
They're not trying to have a relationship with you. They're not even trying to love you.
Because they don't love themselves.
Yeah, they just want you to love them.
Yeah.
They want you to give to them. And I honestly didn't realize what a taker this man was. I mean, now, of course, looking back, I was just constantly giving and giving and giving and trying to mend the bridge and trying to mend the bridge. Even though he was the one literally blowing it up, I was the one trying to put the fires out constantly, right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that in the moment, of course. I felt miserable. I felt sick. I was dysregulated, but I didn't know that that's what it was. It wasn't until we had separated, we had broken up for months, in a horrific, he had like this really down, awful time, and I just showed up. Even though we were kind of like on the rocks, not really together, I showed up for him because I thought I would want someone to show up for me in this, and he was just struggling, and I thought I'm going to be there for him because he needs someone. And I went and I did all these things, and I helped him out in all these different ways, and this is so wild looking back. I remember after showing up for him, it was like 2 days, like something crazy was going on in his life. Not really even crazy, but he was just struggling. And I remember showing up, and I won't say all the things I did because at this point it's embarrassing now, but I did a bunch of different things for him to help him. And I remember within like 2 or 3 days after doing that, he literally just sent me a text and said, "I'm good now." How did he say it? He basically just said like, "Thanks for everything. I'm good. I don't need you anymore." Basically is what he said after I had done all that. And then we were still talking within that week. It's like I didn't understand it in that moment, but something really horrific happened for me. And he was just nowhere to be found. And I remembered reaching out to him at some point being like, I could really use like your help right now. Not like I didn't need anything from him, just to be there with me. Like it would mean so much to me if you would just be here with me in this. And he was like, "I don't know what to tell you, light a candle." And that was like so crushing. It was like so crushing. And I wrote a quote about this that just went like viral, but it was basically just like, there is no type of pain like showing up in someone's darkness only for them to disappear in yours. And I didn't hear from him again for months.
For months?
For months.
Jeez.
Months. He just vanished off the face of the planet when I needed him.
That's crazy.
Anyway, my whole point was, even still, I didn't know that he was just using me. I mean, I knew, but I didn't. But I got the confirmation that I needed months later. We kind of reconnected. We were friends-ish. And my social media blew up in the process of our breakup, right?
Oh.
I just went.
Did he come back?
I went viral.
Mm-hmm.
And we reconnected. And actually, to be honest, we only reconnected because I reached out to him and at that point, I had said, look, I don't really know what happened with us, but I do see now that I was triggered by a lot of things in our relationship, and I don't know that was the cause, but I've healed and grown a lot from that, and I do want to apologize if the things that I did were triggering to you as well. I was just trying to be a good person. And we reconnected. Anyway, long story short, my social media had blown up. He comes back. He basically wants to be on my podcast, okay?
What? And
I couldn't tell you why. Wanted me to hire him to do some work for my social media, and he was going to charge me a huge amount of money, and because I was looking to hire someone. Wanted me to meet up with him on a vacation, and pretty much was gonna let me pay for everything. And it just hit me one day. I had already bought a ticket to meet this man in Europe. This is so dumb. And it hit me one day, what am I doing? This man doesn't care about me at all. So I sent him a message, and I just said, look, I'm probably not going to have you on my podcast. And I just want you to know, moving forward, I'm happy to be friends. But this is never going to be a situationship type of thing. I'm not going to be your friends with benefits. And I just need you to know that. Because I don't know what you're wanting or expecting from me, but it's just not going to look like it did before. Because I'm not that person anymore. He totally flipped a switch. Jace basically was just yeah, I don't think I'm feeling a vibe here anymore, whatever. And I said, okay, that's fine. And he said, maybe we just need to work together professionally. I was like, no, I don't trust you enough to work with you professionally, and I don't think it's a good idea. Communicated a couple times. I canceled my trip. We haven't spoken since.
How does that feel? How did that feel?
At the moment, it was really hard. It hurt because I realized in that moment that it was any question I might have had about whether or not this man was using me was completely answered in that moment. Because the moment he realized he wasn't getting anything from me, he had zero interest in being in my life. It sucked.
Yeah.
But it taught me something so valuable. And it showed me how I had overcompensated so many times just to keep the peace with people and have them in my life that didn't even deserve to be in my life to begin with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, I tell that story because I know someone can relate to that. But the healing work that I did was the only reason I had the strength to tell him, this isn't going to be how it used to be, and I'm not giving you anything. And if you don't want to be in my life, that's okay. And he didn't. And I would have never been able to do that if I hadn't sat with myself and found my self-worth before that. I had done so much work on myself. But anyway, I don't know where I'm going with this. I had a point when I started the story. I lost it along the process.
It sounds like it's in alignment with what you're saying, with what I was saying, where someone who's just trying to gain from you and they have no concern how it makes you feel having to overextend yourself.
Yes.
So there are clearly a lot of people like that will only stay in a relationship. So that's what your story said to me.
I guess in a way too, for the listeners, there are people out there that will use you.
Oh, guaranteed.
There are people that will use you, and yes, it sucks and it hurts. And when you're a compassionate, loving, understanding person that truly loves connection with other people, it is really hard to grasp.
It is.
But that's why we need people like you. And
Thank you.
For the listeners, that's why what you're doing is so freaking important, because you're literally shining a light on those things that they do, the toxic behaviors that truly aren't acceptable.
No.
Right? You said you used to be toxic yourself.
Yeah. Back to that. So what's the question? How?
I want you to tell me, at what point did you realize I'm being a shitty person right now? I'm being shitty.
When I got a counselor.
Oh.
Now, here's what I could say. Before that, I knew something was going wrong because I kept losing the women that I wanted.
Oh.
I lost a lot of great women.
Can I ask you a question about that? Did those women even know that you really wanted them that much? Or were the behaviors that you were showing them, did that make it look like you really didn't care?
I think there was a mixture of both. I think that I tried to do the gas chamber thing, where I tried to, if I was mad at you, I would turn off the phone and not talk to you. One time I went sometimes 2 weeks.
What?
Because in my mind, I was upset that you didn't do what I wanted. So I was like, okay, you went a day or two without talking to me, and the first thing I hear is some dude, and that maybe isn't even the full context, but all my brain hears is, what makes you insecure, Xavier? So then I was like, I'm going to make you insecure back. I'm going to teach you a lesson so that you know not to do that, because I don't want to have to admit, because then I'm going to give up my hand. Why should I have to do that? You give up yours. So we're gonna battle. We're in a battle you don't even know about.
Yeah,
and
that's the thing.
I would take a week to get back, and then out of nowhere I'd be like, hey, thought about you.
Yeah, oh my God. They do that. They so do that.
And I had one woman, I did a whole performance. I wasn't even that mad, but I packed my stuff and I was yelling and I was like, you don't even care about making this work. And I stormed out and talked to her for 2 weeks. And then I came back 2 weeks later. I was in pain, in shambles. That's how I knew I wasn't a narcissist, because I was hurting those 2 weeks. But I was like, it's gotta happen. It's the right thing to do. It's for your own good. It's best for her. Yeah.
She needs to learn a lesson.
So after this, you'll really want me, and then we can make this work. And then I came back, and she was like, I can't do this. She said, boy, I gotta go. And I was like, wait, huh? That's not part of the plan?
No. That 2 weeks was supposed to make you want me more.
Yeah. What's up? The worse I get, the more you want me. Isn't that the trade-off? So, no.
Kudos to her, by the way.
Yeah, kudos to her big time, because that started my journey. Because then I was like, something's wrong here. I'm not getting what I want. I'm losing out on great women, and I'm not sure how many opportunities I'm going to get with great women. So, yeah, that started to destroy me. Dang. So, God bless the women that walked away from me, because if they didn't, that's why women ask me, how do I change this man? I'm like, you gotta walk away sometimes, because believe it or not, you're helping him way more than you think. Because when I lost that person, that was my moment. And don't just come back in a week because I'm begging you on hands and knees.
Yeah.
Go. Because After a certain point, when you've been treated so badly for so long, it doesn't even matter how you feel. It's a matter of principle at this point.
Yeah,
this person
100%.
got away with way too much.
Yeah.
So what's the incentive at this point for them to change? They got away with everything. Sometimes you just got to go off that and be with someone who won't mess up that much.
Oh, man. And you know what? I've gotten so good at that, by the way. That is one thing I am so proud of, because it is never with malicious intent, but I am so good at recognizing what behaviors I do not want in a relationship with someone, and just being like, I'm sorry, like, this is where I stand, and I'm not gonna participate in a relationship with someone that does these things. And it doesn't mean I'm judging you. You do you. I wish you the best, but that's not what I want, and I'm sorry.
And people struggle with that because then they look at what other people are saying and doing, and they try to mirror that. Well, this person says that should be okay, so I'm going to listen to that. Or maybe I'm being too harsh.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm asking for too much. And they try to like weed through that. But sometimes you just have a subjective reality where you're like, in my reality, this just doesn't work. And I don't need validation from anyone to say whether that's right or wrong.
Yeah.
What works for me isn't going to work for everyone else.
Yeah, I don't think about it in any terms of other than this doesn't feel good, and it's just not what I want, because it's not what I would do. Like, it's not even about, like, you got to meet these super high standards. It's nothing to do with that. It's how many times am I going to let you make me feel a certain way because of your insufficiencies or your insecurities or your issues that you need to work on that aren't mine to fix. Like, and it isn't even personal, really. It's like you said, it's a principle of, I deserve this. I deserve to be respected. My time deserves to be respected. I deserve to be spoken to kindly. And those are just basic, simple things. And if you're crossing those boundaries with me now, like, I'm sorry, it's just not going to work for me. Doesn't make you a bad person. But this is what I want, this is what I deserve, and this is how I'll treat you in return. So if you're not going to do that, that's okay. But we're not in alignment. We don't want the same thing, and that's okay. And
then, there was a report, another 2015 report. I think it was in spring. I forgot who the guy was that wrote it, but it was basically a man who coaches other men who are abusive. Ooh. And he asked them, why do you do this? Like, what do you gain from it? And there's like a list that the dudes made about why being abusive and controlling works for them. Oof. And in that list, it was like, I get security. She does what I want. Financial security. I don't have to worry. And it's like all of these things where it's in favor of themselves. And they actually list it out. And, I saw this other study about fruit flies, where apparently if the male is rejected sexually, then he will drink alcohol because the reward center of the brain needs to be fulfilled. So the male fruit fly will drink 3 times as much alcohol as a male that's chosen. And that's wild, right?
What?
I heard that. I was like, wait a minute, huh?
Fruit flies?
Because when they're rejected, so you got to think about that in bigger terms in society. Men who are rejected, who are not getting what they want, getting access, how they tend to respond, and they learn because they feel so down in the dumps and they're not, getting back to where they need to be emotionally. So instead of, figuring out how to become better or how to align themselves better, or not worrying about letting a woman be your everything, like following purpose and then letting it happen naturally, right? Instead, they're looking for instant gratification rewards. So they go to other men who are getting results, may not be for the right reasons, and then they channel that energy. So that's happening a lot.
I can't wait to start referring to toxic men as fruit flies. That's my new thing now. Oh, he's a fruit fly, girl.
Alcohol,
he's
baby.
A fruit fly.
Alcohol.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
The reward system. So it's that rewarding part of the brain that we keep trying to go after, and we prioritize that. When we prioritize things over each other, that's when because you said, like, how don't they feel it? The ego. Because it's ego and pride. You can't insert vulnerability in there. My ego is protecting me from that.
But that's what I don't understand. Like, I look back on certain relationships where I genuinely gave my best and tried and did everything and, like, overcompensated, like I've said. But it's like, why can't a man in that situation that has a good woman in front of him, that is a good person, that is trying so hard to make it work with you, Why can't you put that ego aside for just a second? Why?
Because it's scary. Terrifying. If you're an amazing woman that's doing a lot of the great things, and that means other people can see that. That means other men can see that. And I'm in competition with other men. So I need to stop you from seeing that other men can be an option. I need you to focus on me. And I'm scared because if I become vulnerable to you, and let's say you like someone else or you do something with someone else and I lose you, then how am I going to live with myself?
But they lose you anyway.
But we don't expect it. And then if we do lose you on that account, then it's because there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like
it's never on us.
They may do that, but then at some point the woman's going, I've given everything and I've got nothing left. And they leave. And so that man loses you anyway. And he could have probably kept you if he could have just put his ego aside.
But then this is where the horror stories come in from men. There's a lot of men that claimed they have been good men and they have done the right thing only to be screwed over. And then you hear the men who have like 5 or 6 girls in their orbit, but they're doing all the most ratchet things imaginable. So why, like the bad boys versus good boys argument? The bad boys are always getting the girls. So the good guys hear that, or the wannabes, and they're like, I can't compete. I want to be one of them. Yeah. I want to do what works. Yeah. I don't want to be the anomaly and follow this own basic pattern where all my friends are getting screwed over.
Do you think that men that are like that just like they want like 4 or 5, oh hell, as many as they can get women around, but none of them real relationships, more just like, transactional things, and the woman's good because she doesn't want a relationship with you either, but she likes being taken out on your yacht and, all these things. Do you think that men like that feed on relationships like that because it doesn't require them to be vulnerable? Because if you're not ever close enough to someone to have to open up to them, you don't ever have to be vulnerable.
Yeah, that's a big benefit. Like I get to have as much access and time and energy as I can from a woman without ever having to put in work emotionally. Mm-hmm. Already emotional work that I probably don't even know how to do because growing up as a dude, where do I get that space? Right. So yeah, it's the easier route. It's harder to be like, let me be vulnerable to someone that's going to have my heart and I have to trust that they're not going to betray me.
So really, when you boil that down, those types of men are actually probably the most insecure of them all.
I would say so.
The weakest of them all. Those aren't the alphas at all.
No, but they will shout from the rooftops.
Oh, yeah, they want everyone to know that they think they are. But, I mean, you can't even be an alpha man if you can't put your ego aside and actually be a human for a minute. Like, if everything you do is transactional, you're not an alpha. Did you see what I posted the other day about the study on that?
No.
So you remember they did that guy did that study. I don't remember when it was. He literally just followed this pack of wolves to see who the alpha was in the wolf pack, right?
Oh, interesting.
In his initial study, he found it was the one that was like protecting and that was the most aggressive and the most dominant and the one that was mating the most, and like that in his mind he thought that was the alpha male, and then he realized he was totally wrong. He spent the rest of his career trying to redo this study and tell people, no, that's not the alpha male at all. The alpha male was the quiet, calm one that was always watching over everything and making sure everyone was safe and making sure every wolf in the pack was healthy and fed, and it wasn't the one asserting himself and dominating everything. It was the one sitting back and quietly leading and protecting. And I was just like, oh my God. And we have an entire culture now. We have an entire culture based on the first study that wasn't even accurate, of men that think they're an alpha because they're dominant and they're, the toughest and the strongest and the most assertive and the less, vulnerable. And it's like, no, that's actually not the alpha at all.
This is where, we want the title but not the work. So it's, I'm CEO, but I do surface level stuff. So in my opinion, a leader or an alpha, if we want to call it that, which I hate those words,
but hate them too.
So is someone who is disciplined, who's reliable and trustworthy, who looks out for other people, who's not just indulging into every little emotion and urge that you get. It's someone that we can look up to you over everyone because you found a way to achieve the most while doing the least amount of, debauchery, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a person that's a leader. And that job is hard because while everyone's gallivanting and doing what they want and having fun and losing their life, you're still moving forward. You're still believing and progressing. You're doing the hard stuff. You're resisting temptation and you're doing quality stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a leader. But No, just saying, oh, I got all these things, and if you want it, I don't know.
I don't want it.
It doesn't work for me.
One of the benefits of being, a woman that is older now, I'm 38 now, and one of the benefits of being 38 and single and having my own money and my own things and my own business and my own life is that I no longer need the things that I thought I needed when I was younger. Mm-hmm. So I can have higher expectations now because I don't have to rely on you for anything anymore. Like if you're in my life, I'm choosing to let you in my space. I'm trusting you to be in my life, to have a connection with you. I'm not gaining anything by having you in my life outside of connection and intimacy. That's it. And truthfully, most women can get that anywhere they want without any attachments at all if they truly wanted that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, one of the things I would tell women, I'm sure you've probably heard this and seen this and said it yourself, is that learning to become independent is honestly one of the greatest ways to protect yourself from men like that. Because if you don't need them, they can't manipulate you for the things that you thought you needed. You know what I mean? If you don't need their money, they can't manipulate you with their money. If you don't need their status, they can't manipulate you with status.
I agree. And there's also, to add on to yours, like the want for love and connection and someone to hold you, a relationship. Because I've heard women in my classes say, well, I'm older now. I have more kids. What guy is going to want to deal with this? Because you hear it all over the internet. Oh, you got kids. It's over.
Yeah.
And what I try to tell them is that don't listen to the people on the internet. First, the internet's not a real place half the time. It's just people shouting who's louder. But character is bigger than all of that.
Yeah.
And also with great character can override a lot of these things. It's not going to make it perfect. We're not entitled to be chosen. Mm-hmm. We're not even entitled to a relationship or to falling in love, right? Yeah. Or the emotion of it. But we can say, hey, I'm going to do my best with the life that I have.
Yeah.
And if that happens to happen, that's nice.
Yeah.
But we prioritize it so much. We attach our value to it. Mm-hmm. If I don't have a relationship, if I don't have a person, if I don't have love, then my life isn't valuable. Mm-hmm. So I've seen that happen, whereas it's not even about the guy anymore. Mm-hmm. It's about the idea of it. So then they get just a guy that seems halfway decent. And they're like, let me just have this. And then they're like, oh, why does this suck? Because it's like you weren't even thinking. When you put the relationship, when you put the marriage before the guy, that's a hard gamble.
Oh, and people do it all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
The marriage, the wedding, like how many people focus on building up a wedding and not making sure that their relationship after the fact is going to be good? Mm-hmm. Like after the wedding is over and they spend all this money, they're like, oh, okay, well, what do we do now? Romance is gone. They relive the video 10 times. I'm like... Yeah,
cry because it's like, wow, that was a beautiful day. What happened?
You could have had a cheaper wedding, and you could have used that money towards investments or your honeymoon, right? That it's more about you two as individuals together.
Yeah.
So...
That's so good and so true. And I think that's probably one of the greatest lessons that every woman has to learn, because women, even at an early age in life, they get this idea in their head that it's all about the wedding. It's all about walking down that aisle with that beautiful white dress on. Like, it's what every woman, used to be, what every woman dreamed of. It was like the ideal day, like the best day of your entire life. And you're so amped to get to that point that you're overlooking every single red flag that this person is showing you because you just want to walk down an aisle in a white dress. And then you do. And you see the way that they respond at the end of the aisle, and it's not how you thought it would be or how it hoped it would be. And you can actually see in their eyes that they're really not even that happy to be there. But here you are, and you got the white dress on, and that's really great. And there's so many guests, and the party's going to be fun after. And then the next day arrives, and you realize that person was shallow. That person never really even loved you that much. And you're going, shit, what have I done? Mm-hmm. What have I done?
And I think a lot of women are taught that, from an early age. Like, how to be a wife.
How to be a wife.
How to be a mother.
How to be a mother.
Oh, make sure you do this for the man. Make sure he has this. Make sure, because you're going to have a wedding one day, and then you get pressured as you get older. When you're a teenager going into your 20s, you don't have a boyfriend yet. You don't have a husband yet. You haven't, the clock is ticking, girl. It's like all of that. I'm like, that doesn't help.
No.
Like, how many times do you guys just say, have you found someone you get along with? Let's just start there. Forget the future stuff. Yeah. We put priority on things that are superficial. 100%. It's even happening in social media now.
Yeah.
How tall is he? How much money does he make? How beautiful is she? You know,
Yeah.
How young is she? How old is she?
How's that booty?
Yeah, and I get it, but at the same time,
Nothing wrong with a good booty, but
you know, I get it. But at the same time, I'm just like, that's not going to make this. That's not what a relationship is for, or a marriage.
right. Having a great ass isn't going to make you a good mother. Let's just be real.
Having a lot of money doesn't make him a nice guy.
No, facts. In fact, a lot of times it makes him the opposite.
Oh yeah, no, and I've seen it. Like I've had a couple people where the guy got too much money, and he is. So, you know, we're missing those things, and we're placing value on superficial way too much, and that's going to keep destroying us because you're not looking at what makes you, your character. And I hear guys on podcasts, they're like, I'm a high value man because I have, I'm over 6 feet, you know, I have $100K a year. So I'm in that top percentile. So every girl wants this. And I'm like, but dude, that's not even the start really. It's like, what about who you are as a person?
Yeah.
What about the safe space you can give her to feel loved or to feel appreciated? What other value are you adding outside of money? Just throwing money on the table and walking away, that's like a service and a transaction. You know, it's like we don't talk about character at all. Like, why is that out the window when that's the thing you need, probably more than all of this?
Yeah.
You guys can be financially okay and have amazing character and have a way better marriage than someone who's rich.
Yeah.
You know, like you could have an amazing situation.
I mean, and honestly, like as you get older too, and you reevaluate your life and you heal, you also realize like the importance of alignment. Mm-hmm. Like forget all the other little things on the outside. Like alignment is so important. Like to have a life with someone, it is so important to choose someone that wants the kind of life that you're living. That and to be with someone who has the same values and the same goals, or at least similar, like parallels, where your lives actually work together. Like the whole idea of opposites attract. You may attract physically, but when you get in a relationship with someone that's complete opposite of you in every way, when it not like with, oh, I like TV and he likes, you know, books, that's totally different. Those are, you know, minuscule things that don't matter. But when you're talking about you're a super driven person that, you know, you want to, let's say your goal is to become like Mother Teresa, and you're dating a guy that just loves to party every single weekend, I don't care how good looking they are. Those two types of lifestyles do not align with one another. Those do not work no matter how hard you try. You can keep trying and trying and trying, and you're always going to have those fundamental core values, things that just don't align, and it doesn't work.
You're so right. And this brings me to another point where women have told me that, you know, like they're the good one. You know, they hold it down for them. While he's out doing whatever, she's holding it together. And I'm like, I don't think it works that way.
Yeah.
Because if you think of fruits like apples, you know, the rotten one, if you put it next to the fresh one, it'll leak on.
Yeah.
So eventually you're going to become poisoned by his behavior and his thinking process.
Yeah.
You're choosing to love someone. You're choosing to be vulnerable. If you choose to be vulnerable to someone that has a lower vibration than you, you don't think you're going to be affected too?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's eventually going to take you down.
Right. And again, the importance of alignment. If you're up here and you're thriving and you're doing well, and this person's down here and they're in a horrible place, and I'm not saying that if you're madly in love with someone, you can't go down there and be with them for a minute to help bring them back up. I'm not saying you can't do that, but also it depends on the person's willingness to be pulled up out of their darkness, right?
Yeah.
If they're not even willing to let you pull them up, if that's where they want to stay, you're going to end up down there. You're going to end up where they are. You know what I mean?
Because if you think about the concept of changing a habit, like you want to start going to the gym, it takes 30 to 90 days to truly make that feel good to you.
Yeah.
And then even then, sometimes you want to fall off the wagon.
Yeah.
So when a woman says, you know, I want him to change, I'm like, okay, how many personality traits are we talking here? Because if you got 1, maybe 2, that's pushing it. 3, he's got to take 30 to 90 days of conscious effort and be convinced that himself, outside of you, that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, he's going to want it.
To make that transition.
But also there's a line, too, where it's like, you can't expect someone to change that much for you before you realize that this just isn't the right person for me.
Because then they're going to change who they are as a person.
Yes.
It's kind of like a Rubik's Cube where it's like one color is off. You got to change the whole Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It's like at some point you're diving into that person's personality.
It's one thing to say, hey, like these are the ways I want you to treat me. That's one thing. But when you get to where you're like, I don't like this about you, I don't like that about you, I don't want you to be like this and do this and like these things.
Too many.
That's a totally different ballgame, and there are literally people that will do that. Literally, people will get into a relationship with someone that is so different from anything they want or need because there's an attraction there, or the sex is good, or whatever. Not even realizing that, like, if you want to change them that badly, that's not the person you're supposed to be with. It's one thing to say, I just want you to be kind to me. That's a great expectation. That's a decent expectation. That's something somebody can work with.
Yeah.
But if you're like, I don't want you to be the type of person that likes driving a Buick. I mean, just for a dumb example, but it's like, if you go after a Buick person, but you want somebody that drives a Mercedes, again, dumb example, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like,
I get it.
No, quit going after the people in the Buick and expecting them to go buy a Mercedes. Like, if you are a Mercedes person, you go for the people that like a freaking Mercedes. Anyway,
So,
sorry.
but think about what that does to your brain chemistry.
And what it does to them.
Your cognitive dissonance kicks in, right? Because you're telling yourself you don't like 4 or 5 qualities about this person, but yet I love them. So now you're still indulging in the relationship. You're still kissing them, holding them, telling you love them, sleeping with them. All the while, you've got 5 things that you don't like. So what does that mean?
That you know aren't going to work.
And so, in a way, you're not being real with yourself. So you've got a person who's not being real with you. You're not being real with yourself. So this person isn't loving you properly. You're not loving yourself properly. Who's defending you?
Yeah.
So now you're left out to dry, and you're like, why do I always end up in relationships when no one values me?
Because you're not considering what you actually need or want or desire.
Exactly.
And I mean, it's just simple. Like, and I learned this way too late in life, but it's like, as a person who doesn't drink or party or do those things, I don't judge it at all. But I also know that I'm not going to be peaceful or safe or content in a relationship with someone that does. And that doesn't mean I judge people that do. Like, two people that both enjoy going out and having drinks and, you know, having a nights out and stuff like that, that both enjoy that and love that, that's fine for them. But if I try to mix with someone that does those things and that's not who I am at all, it's just conflict waiting to happen, right? Like, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know?
Because eventually you're going to have to participate with each other. I mean, unless you guys have that understanding, but that's going to be a little risky. Because if you don't personally like that and it doesn't feel good for you and your partner's doing it more often, I don't know. I feel like at some point there's going to be a conflict.
I mean, it's one thing to be like, oh, he enjoys a glass of whiskey every night. That's okay. That's fine. I can deal with that, you know? But I'm just saying lifestyles are so important. Like, considering what someone's lifestyle is.
Yeah, and that's when they come up with that statement, opposites attract. And I'm like, I mean,
physically, maybe.
Yeah. But I'm like, you know, you can have, it's about being a puzzle piece.
Yeah.
You know, the right relationships or a lot of the good ones are puzzle pieces.
Right.
You have strengths I don't have and vice versa. So maybe I'm calm and you're more active. And this is where I don't like the masculine and feminine word, because I feel like I understand what these words are supposed to mean. Yeah. But to me, they're kind of arbitrary. Because if you switch them up, then people get offended. If you call a man feminine or a woman masculine, it becomes offensive. So I don't think that these words can help us. I think the words active or passive can come in, because those are interchangeable. I can be passive sometimes and active sometimes. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong, but if you call me feminine, it's like, oh, now that's an insult.
Yeah, that's so true.
So that doesn't help us using those words.
I want to sum this up with a few things. What would you tell, and I'm just going to say, I'm going to generalize it, someone. I'm not going to say a woman, because, you know, obviously this is interchangeable sometimes.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give a woman who is putting herself back out into the world, and maybe she's been the type of person that's always, you know, settled, or she's always overlooked the red flags? Like, what would you tell her? Like, as a man, knowing the toxic behaviors that men portray and you know, and do to get a woman, what would you think would be like the most important thing for her to understand, putting herself back out there when choosing someone that's actually good for her?
So what I would say is give yourself grace. Give yourself, know that you deserve love, and have a list, right? One list is have a list of pros and cons when you meet someone, because sometimes we can't see it because of our patterns. Understanding that we are sometimes victims to our own patterns. When the cons start to outweigh the pros, that's what you can see objectively without applying your own subjective reality to it, right? So start another list of your boundaries and standards that you will not willing to cross regardless of any excuse or what he says or what he does or how it makes you feel. Have these as ironclad when you go back out there. And that'll help you know, because sometimes you got to go back to that list. But I would say that you are worthy of love. You are worthy of being treated right and met halfway. Don't settle for less. But these lists will start to help you on that journey.
Okay, and I have a question for you.
Sure.
That I think will be helpful too.
Okay.
Let's say a woman, she has her list, or a guy. They have their list. They're doing pros and cons, and they have their standards, their expectations, and their boundaries that they will not settle on, that are ironclad. But let's say they're still in the beginning stages where it's not like nothing's really official yet. How firm should you be on that list in the beginning stages when you aren't really a thing yet? You're still kind of just getting to know that person. Like, when does that shift into, okay, this is a must versus I'm still feeling this person out, or should it always be in place?
It should always be in place. If it ends up day one, you see what you don't want to see, get out. Because you got to think of it this way. It's a numbers game. You know, if you get, let's say there's 100 compatible men for you and 99 have to be weeded out. And let's say your person is number 74. How quick do you have to move? You got to think in terms of that. It's not about trying to connect with every single guy, trying to feel those feelings. In fact, feelings are nice to have. They're not the ultimate decider. Or you got to think more on logic and objective, right? And insert, of course, feelings. Chemistry is a good thing. Attraction is right. But you're focused more on, is this going to be a partner? So you gotta weed through. Your guy number 74 is here. You gotta get through all of these guys. If you stop at guy number 5 or number 10 and you end up in a 5-year run, then you're burnt out. Then you have to heal from that for another 3 years. Then it's too much time. So be careful with your time. Weed them out fast. When I talk to women and they come to my office and they're like, okay, I got 5 guys. I'm like, okay, I don't like this, done. This, done. I'll weed them out to 1. Sometimes 0. I'll get them through it fast. Because we're not playing games. Like, I want to get you in a healthy situation as quickly as possible. Sense of urgency.
Yeah. Okay. That's
Does
really good.
that make sense?
No, I agree.
Okay.
I totally agree. But there was a time in my life where I would have been like, oh, but wait, maybe.
But
like,
maybe, but he's.
I don't know. I should probably give him another chance. I mean, we're not really dating.
You know what I'll do when she says that? I'm like, okay, let me know how that turns out. They always come back. They always come back with, well, Xavier, here's what he did. And I'm like, I told you.
Yeah, you're like, I saw that coming my way.
Yeah.
So did you, to be fair. Okay, and then what would you say to a woman that, again, same scenario, okay?
I love this.
But let's say she is dating and she's finally put herself back out there. She's dating some. When is the cut? Like, at what point should a woman be like, all right, we're done here? How does a woman know? I mean, outside of the obvious of, like, we'll say cheating or, you know,
in a relationship, you're talking?
Yeah. So, like, let's say a woman's, you know, she's dating. She's been dating someone for a while, and we'll say he's not necessarily physically abusive, but he hasn't cheated on her, but it just doesn't feel right. Like, when should a woman walk away?
So clearly, if you get into the relationship, what I would think is you guys have established some things, right? So hopefully before you get into the relationship, you talk about expectations.
Okay.
And when he's falling short of those, and because you're gonna, right? You're human. When you guys have conflict or when he's doing things that go against what you guys have established as good.
What if you never established anything? What if you've been casually dating and that there are no, like, set boundaries between the two of you?
That's a risk. If you don't set those, that's like going into a job without being told what the HR policy is. You know, like, you got to talk about that first, because if you just casually wind up in here and then you start calling them out, you don't know if these things were deal breakers or not. You don't know how deep it is.
Translate what it means when a guy says, I just want to go with the flow.
I just want to sleep with you and have access to you without the commitment of being emotionally responsible for you or accountable.
What translate, I really like you and I want to date and I could see a future with you, but right now I'm like super focused on work and other things, so I can't promise anything.
My priority is everything else but you.
Translate, you're like the girl of my dreams, but I do want to still keep my options open.
I don't respect you at all. You're likable and you're probably awesome and very pretty, but Because you got to think, when a guy really likes you, like when he really believes this can work, he is careful. He does not want to blow this.
Yeah, right.
He's doing everything right. So when he starts giving you those rejection statements, that's a sign that, And see, that's when the ego comes in, because it can come in on the woman's side too, where she's like, well, why aren't I getting chosen? I want to be someone you would be nervous to lose. So let me show you more of my value. And then that goes into that whole thing. So that's a sign of no respect.
Okay. Translate, I like to take things slow because going fast in my past relationships always blew up. And I like you, but I just don't want to call this anything. I want to take time.
Don't have sex or kiss him.
Not even kiss?
You can if you want to. Kissing releases hormones that can be part of the reward system of the brain and can make you go into a pattern where you start to overlook things. So we want to keep you as objective as possible. So if he says, I want to move slow, we should be able to be friends then, right? That's what friendship is.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, we can be consistent friends. Let's talk all the time, and let's never do anything physical. Because that's what we do when we're going towards a relationship. Now, when you're ready to go towards a relationship and be exclusive, then let's talk.
Okay. Translate, I want to be exclusive with you, but in a couple years I'm moving and I can't promise anything.
Do not date him. Do not date him.
I like you and I want to spend the time that I have left here with you, but I am moving in a couple years.
I'll be the woman. Well, I'm looking for someone who's a little bit more rooted in where they are, because I have no plans on moving. So I hope you find what you're looking for. You seem like a wonderful guy. I'm sure you'll make a girl very happy. Maybe there is a girl that will sign up for that. But I only have space for someone that wants to build a future and is looking to be more stable and consistent.
And what if he says, well, you need to live a little bit more? Like, you can't put conditions like that on people. Like, something really beautiful could come from this in the 2 years that we would have together.
Okay, so my life doesn't plan out in 2-year increments. So good luck with that. And please stop trying to tell me what my idea of good is going to be like.
Yeah.
I respect your idea. Please respect mine.
Okay, love that. Love that. Okay, where can people find you?
Xaviertainment on Instagram, TikTok. You can just type it into Google. But Xaviertainment, so it's like entertainment. I hate having to explain that.
Well, for people on my page, you can find him on my page as well. Just go to my following or my followers, and you'll find him on there as well. But what about TikTok? Is it the same thing on TikTok?
It's the same thing across the page. Yeah. And your content is awesome as well. Like, guys, look for Ashley Maland. You know, if you want to learn more about toxic and abusive and how to navigate being a victim, this is healing afterwards. And healing afterwards.
Getting to that point where you can go from overcompensating to, I'm sorry, this isn't what I want. I wish you the best. That's important.
That's how we get to what we need.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our app, guys. Thank you so much for listening to another episode. And don't forget to check out Xavier Entertainment or Xaviertainment. Xaviertainment.
Yeah.
And it's exactly how it's spelled.
Yeah.
Tainment. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely.
All right.